Hello, sweet folks. I appreciate your presence here on our mutual journey to heal the hearts of children who've been harmed by difficult beginnings while loving our lives at the same time. I'm Ce Eshelman, and this is UnMuted Love. Today, I'm here to talk with Dajana Yoakley. She's a dedicated advocate for bringing peace and connection to the parenting journey through self-compassion. That's what we all need more of, don't you think? She's a certified peaceful parenting coach and playful parenting leader who trained with Dr. Laura Markham of Peaceful Parenting fame and Dr. Lawrence Cohen of Playful Parenting fame. Dajana's platform, Delight in Parenting, is the place she empowers parents with strategies and tools to cultivate respectful, peaceful, and loving relationships with their children. Dajana has 3 kids, which definitely informs her work, I'm sure. 14, 10, and 7? They might be different ages now, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Welcome, Dajana, to UnMuted Love.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and our topic for the day.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it too. In this episode, we're going to zero in on showing up in the moment of dysregulation, parents, which is one of the things that plagues all of us, especially parents of children from difficult beginnings, because of the frequency, duration, and intensity of our children's dysregulation. So let's just start there. It's sort of the moment when everything goes sideways. When a child flips into full dysregulation, what's actually happening in their brain and body? And what do most parents misunderstand about this moment?
Yeah, such an important question. So it's one of the most difficult moments for us to parent the way that we want to, because it's not just what's happening to the child's nervous system and brain. It's also how our brain and our nervous system is receiving that. It's like a sender and a receiver, because between two people, you have this like back and forth communication. And so we get kind of entangled in this dysregulation with them so often, right? Mm-hmm. What's happening in the child's nervous system is that they're going from a state of being able to tolerate what's happening, which is called like the window of tolerance, and how much capacity they have to tolerate stress. And then there's like, if they go beyond that, it's outside the window of tolerance. They are being stretched so thin that they cannot hold it in anymore. And they have meltdowns. They become overwhelming and overwhelmed. They have challenging behaviors. They act out unskillfully. Again, when we look at the biology of what's actually happening, it is a stressed out child, an overwhelmed child, a nervous system that's doing its best to preserve the person that it's, part of. And the most skillful thing that the child has access to right now is acting out, having a meltdown. It feels to them like the only choice. And actually the nervous system automatically responds to this. It's called the autonomic nervous system, but it's actually automatic when there's a threat detected. So that might be you saying no, and that can feel like a threat to a child, or you're asking them to get in the shower, and that has been a traumatic transition for them in the past, separating from you, or at bedtime, or at any other time when there's maybe a transition, let's say. If it feels like a threat, they're going to act like they're in survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, there's only 3 things generally agree upon things you can do when you feel so threatened that you need to be in survival mode. If you're either going to fight the person, which means argue, yell, or physically attack, fight. Flight, meaning you're going to just run away. They're going to run off to the room and slam the door, or freeze. They're going to be like deer in the headlights, freeze. Usually that's a response of shame, and they bow their head and kind of just like look down, and shoulders are slumped, and they kind of like are freezing in this moment, not doing anything, but also not listening to you because they are disconnected. They're dissociated, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest misunderstandings for parents is this kid is doing this on purpose, and they're doing this to me. And parents starts to feel overwhelmed, and they start to feel like a victim. And then sometimes they stay in victim mode as a parent. Oh, woe is me, right? Or they become a perpetrator. I feel powerless. This child is making me feel powerless. How dare they be so disrespectful to me? How dare they act out like this? This is unacceptable behavior. I'm going to shut it down with powering over them. And then the parent becomes the one that dominates the child's nervous system with threat, fear, consequences, punishments. And it might or might not work depending on your child's temperament. But in either case, even if it works, it's not a good thing for the child because it's not meeting the underlying need. The underlying need is I'm feeling threatened. And what they need is safety.
Right. So, okay, the child needs safety. And when it feels personal to the parent, because it does feel personal to the parent,
Yeah.
so many of us feel attacked or rejected or disrespected during dysregulation. So, how do you help parents stay connected to the truth of what's happening without dismissing how intense it feels?
So there's a couple of different, there's always like multiple modalities, right? So a couple of things that you want to massage kind of at the same time. In peaceful parenting, we talk about the three big ideas, which is self-regulate so you can be calm, connect with the child before you take action. Connection primes the nervous system for safety, and so does your calm, by the way, right? And then the third piece is coach the child instead of controlling them. And we're kind of always massaging these ideas at the same time. It seems like it's sequential, which it is in a way, but it's also like they're all important and they're all works in progress throughout. So for the calm self-regulation piece, often what's happening is there's a trigger there. So let's say the child was disrespectful. It wouldn't feel disrespectful to all parents. It feels disrespectful to you because there's some trigger from your own childhood. Maybe when you were disrespectful to your parents, you got the hammer. Or maybe you were always obedient and you were never disrespectful because you learned from your siblings what it looks like and you weren't going to make that mistake, right? So there's some trigger there that now your child isn't allowed to act out in disrespect. That's very personal to your own history and background. And so that's worth exploring in a coaching session with me where we go into the body and we reconnect with that vulnerability underneath that trigger that is like, yeah, it wasn't safe to talk back to a parent in that tone because you would have gotten in trouble. It was scary. So that's a trigger where we would go into more somatic and explore the internal experience of the parent. At the same time, what also is going on is it's hard to have goodwill and a perspective of the child when you don't have a lot of connection. If most of your interactions with your child are difficult and hard and a lot of meltdowns and you're just burnt out and you're like, oh, I just wish we could get along and have some peace every once in a while. If that ratio is favoring the negative interactions instead of like the John Gottman 5-to-1 ratio, 5 positives to 1 negative, which is just to neutralize the negative, 20 positives to 1 negative to be actually in a good relationship that you enjoy. If your ratio of positive interactions of connection with your child are lower than the, or even not even 5-to-1, it's going to be harder. You're not going to want to understand their perspective, right? Because you don't have enough goodwill in the relationship with this person. So what I talk to parents about is 80% of your parenting is connection. Outside of there's these moments of meltdown. We need to structure and plan out building in micro moments of connection, physical hugs that feel safe and soothing, finding times to play and maybe roughhouse, finding things to laugh about together that releases oxytocin and bonds us to each other. All these activities that promote connection, because that increases goodwill, and then your nervous system is more likely to perceive your child not as a threat, but as a good kid having a hard time. Because you're like, oh, we've had such good times lately. What's going on for them? This isn't like them. This is so unlike them. How unusual. What must be going on for them to react so dramatically? Surely it's not personal, right? And then the third piece is coaching instead of controlling. So when you're able to stay regulated and calm and you don't get sucked into that trigger yourself, and you're able to connect with your child, that just means you've done your part of the equation, but they might still be having a hard time. And you're not responsible for, you're always only responsible for your own reactions. You can't actually control your child's reactions. If they want to have a meltdown, they can. You can't make them stop, right? You could force them, but that's not a healthy, right, response. So the approach we teach is coaching your child and emotion coaching them particularly. There's other coaching as well, like through routines and setting up the environment for the child to thrive. But in this case, when they're having a meltdown, emotion coaching. And that starts with empathy, welcoming all emotions, which you have to work on this yourself because it's really hard to welcome emotions that you're rejecting in yourself and your child. But empathy. This is really frustrating. Yeah, that you are so upset. This is not what you wanted. And then there's also a distinction when we're validating these emotions in the emotion coaching piece. Highly sensitive, strong-willed kids often have a history with feeling like emotions are scary and emergencies. And so with those kids, it's actually more helpful to talk about validate their perspective, what they wanted or didn't want, basically go a little bit more cognitive with them instead of so like empathic where you're just like, oh, you were so upset, honey, I'm so sorry, right? If they're super sensitive and strong-willed and they have just like a tender relationship with emotions because they feel them so intensely, they're not going to want to tell you about how upset they are. They might actually lash out more. I'm not angry. I'm not sad. Why would I be sad? Stop talking like that, right? So it might be better to say, that's not what you wanted. You wanted something to be different. That makes sense. Yeah, tell me more about that. I hear how frustrating this is, and that's not what you wanted. No. Of course you didn't want that.
Yeah, so those are great. Those three versions to look at. I'm thinking about, the first 10 seconds of a dysregulated sort of blow up, meltdown, collapse, whatever it is. If you could coach a parent in real time during the first 10 seconds or so of a blow up, what would you tell them to do? And equally important, what to stop doing?
Probably the biggest thing to stop doing is to stop talking.
Stop talking.
And to keep a reasonable distance away from your child, especially if they tend to be aggressive or if you tend to like, I don't know, like depending on how old your child is, sometimes if it's a toddler, parents might try to pick up the child and they might grab them too hard, something like that. So keep a little bit of a distance. And also because think about what's happening. They're in fight, flight, freeze. And if they go into fight, you might go into fight. And if you don't think you can act skillfully, if it sucks you into fight mode, then you will see your child as an enemy, not as your precious child having a hard time, right? And so we want to buy ourselves some time and space. So let's say it's happening somewhere across the house, walk a little slower, assuming that there's like no blood spill. Now I know moments in parenting can all feel like emergencies, but most moments in parenting are not emergencies. Even if your kid is unhappy, even if they're angry, it's not an emergency. So move your body through time and space in a way that sends your nervous system a message that's not an emergency. One way would be to like take a deep exhale, like practice forcing yourself to exhale deeply, and then you'll take an inhale. Because when you exhale longer than your inhale, your brainstem is like, she's exhaling like she's relaxing. I thought this was an emergency. She wouldn't be doing that if this was an emergency. So it interrupts the brainstem in one way. Another way is like, if you're feeling angry and you're feeling like the meltdown is triggering like this response in you, shake out your hands, because anger and frustration is like an energy that needs to move, somatically speaking. So like, you can even make a verbal sound with like your voice box. Or let's say you're with your child already and it starts right there. You can even do that. You can be like, this is really frustrating for both of us. If you can close your eyes and not see them for a second, because what you're trying to do when you're trying to tone down the response in your own nervous system, your child's mirror neurons in their nervous system are like reading your like a book. It's like so fast, like super fast. And it's sending either cues of it's an emergency because my parent's acting like it's an emergency, or it's not an emergency because my parent is calming themselves down in front of me. And if you feel embarrassed about doing these things like in front of your kid and like, oh my gosh, this is really frustrating, but you're like moving your body in a way that signals safety to you, your nervous system is going to start to settle. But you're still doing this discharge, right? Sometimes it's helpful to like sit on the floor, like sit on the floor below your child so that you don't feel like you're powering over. Because again, this fight response gets activated and we tend to like slide down the slippery slope of powering over and feeling like the meltdown is a threat. So there's a lot of somatic things that I would focus on in the moment, and remembering that you need to discharge this feeling that you're feeling, regardless of what your child is doing. Now, unless they're coming at you and trying to physically aggressively like hurt you, then I would back away. If they're trying to like kick me or like do something with their hands, I would back away, but not leave. I hear you. This is really frustrating and it's not okay to hit. I'm going to step back so we both stay safe. If they come at you and they're like really close, like they're trying to actually grab you, then last resort, you can grab their hands and kind of like de-escalate physically by containing them. Now, if you're dealing with like a 3-year-old, again, like 4-year-old, where you can like give them maybe like a hug, it's not actually the first place to go. But let's say that without that, they're going to keep hitting you or they're going to like try to break things. That's the place you need to go, is containment. But know that when you touch their body, it registers as threat and they're going to try to like thrash and hit you.
Yeah.
So I would do it for like a second or two. I'm going to let go. It's not okay. We're not going to break things right now. Over time, I don't know if you want me to add more in the moment, because there's like, of course, the long-term, like over time, what happens is also important, but
yeah, for sure.
Questions on that?
Yeah. We're creating new neural pathways for the future.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of parents resist what you're saying, and I say it too, but that because they often fear that staying soft or having soft eyes or staying connected in regulation means they're reinforcing the negative behavior. And how do you help them hold both connection and leadership without tipping into permissiveness?
I think part of that is cultural. Part of that is like, if somebody else was looking at this situation, they would judge me and say, I'm being too permissive. I need to be harder on them. So it's really hard to go against the grain because we all want to belong to like the community and we want to feel like a good parent. But the standards that society has for parenting aren't always in our child's best interest or ours. They're quite outdated. I mean, even pediatricians nowadays, like still, some of them still recommend timeouts. And we know based on neuroscience, like when you separate your child, you can't co-regulate with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it doesn't even make sense scientifically, but practically they still recommend it, right? To handling a toddler. And so one thing is to consciously make a decision that you're going to show up in a way that's in your child's best interest, even if that goes against a cultural grain. And maybe you need to educate yourself more about child development and literally like the child development of the brain development, because it becomes very fact-based when you study that. And that's as much as we know at this point in time about the nervous system and the brain, which there's always new discoveries. But we know 100%, I think all psychotherapists would agree, and psychiatrists, mental health practitioners would say that creating safety is the key for nervous system regulation. If you try to like stuff those emotions, they're going to end up later popping out as maybe depression or anxiety. And if you lash out, your child is learning how to handle like feelings, which is to be angry, right? They're learning your role modeling for them. So calming the situation down with safety is basically expert recommended based on mental health experts, right? And so once you, I think, educate yourself outside the moment about what's the best actual approach, you can feel more confident, not feeling like you're being permissive, but actually supporting your child. And what's awesome is that once you start practicing this, try it out and see what happens with your child after. What happens after you do this 3, 4, 5 times? They're going to feel like they can trust you more. They're going to come to you when they're feeling upset. They will usually also save their big feelings for you because you're the only one that allows them to have their feelings to process. But you become a trusted place for them. You become a safe haven, which I know all of us as parents, we aim for that. So we can't be a safe haven if we're also a source of pain and threat through punishment, consequences, and even rewards, which are external. It goes back to this idea of like unconditional love, which I think all parents believe that they love their child unconditionally. I'm not saying that you condone their behavior, because not all behavior is skillful or respectful or safe. But when the child acts unskillfully, just like when we act unskillfully, because nobody's perfect. In our behavior and our actions, we can act unskillfully. When our child acts that way, let's think about what was the need underneath the behavior that they were needing, which is usually different than the behavior seems to call for. Mm-hmm. And how can we support them to get their needs met, right, like proactively or in the moment?
Right, in better
and
ways.
So we become like a detective almost of scanning our child's needs throughout their childhood and also then later advocating like out loud for our own needs as they become teenagers. Like, I need a break right now. And they learn that they also deserve to take a break when it's overwhelming and that they don't deserve to be treated that way. When somebody's, if a teenager is talking back to you in a disrespectful way, you don't have to stay there. You shouldn't stay there. You can say, I hear both of us are really upset about this right now. And you can try to see if you can say like, and it's not okay. I want to hear what you have to say about this. I want to hear what you're so frustrated about. And it's not okay to talk to me that way. So I'm going I'm going to step away and I'm going to come back and we can talk about this when we're both calmed down. So we're not rejecting the child at their core. We're saying no to the behavior. We're not rejecting their humanity. We actually are doing both. We're showing empathy for their humanity and we're saying no with our boundaries to their unskillful behavior. And if they need us to coach them on a more skillful behavior, we do that once they calm down. But usually kids know the right thing to do. And like we know the right thing to do. We just can't always access it because our nervous system is like, it just like blew up and we don't have access to our prefrontal cortex where our wisdom is. So usually kids know it's not okay to hit. They know it's not okay to be rude to your parents. They know it's not, they don't even want to do that. But because they feel so disconnected or they're so dysregulated, it's a nervous system state. When we are in our ventral vagal is what Dr. Stephen Porges calls it. Like when we're in our socially connected part of the brain, which is the prefrontal cortex, we want to cooperate.
Yeah, for sure. It sort of brings me to, well, first of all, let me just say that I don't think it's actually that human to stay calm in the face of a hyper dysregulated child. I think our own systems follow that up for a real reason to keep us safe. Sometimes when we say, stay calm in the face of your child's behavior, it's sort of like, okay, yeah, that's a ultimate goal. But in terms of like practicality, our systems are going to follow. And we'll have to do something for our nervous system, right, to be able to bring it back into the window or at least not get it outside the window. So stepping back, taking a drink, using some cognitive mantras, it's not an emergency, like you said, but also some self-compassion, that you don't,
Yes,
you're not perfect and your nervous system is just going to ride the wave of this, which is okay.
Yes. So the self-compassion piece is really important because actually what we're experiencing often in these moments is shame, and shame about what's wrong with my kid, shame about what's wrong with me. They're bad or I'm bad, right? And self-compassion is actually based on research, a perfect antidote to shame. Because it has these like 3 stools of self-compassion, which are actually researched by Dr. Kristen Neff and Dr. Christopher Germer. Yeah. And the first one is mindfulness, which is like awareness of what's happening without judgment. So like, wow, I'm really frustrated right now. My heart's beating fast. I feel really tense. I feel like activated. Oh, I'm so frustrated, right? That's the mindful awareness of what's happening. And then the next thing is common humanity. You know what? I'm not the first parent to ever like get triggered by my kid. This is not the first kid in the world to ever have a meltdown. This is not the first kid in the world to ever be aggressive during a meltdown, right? This is all within normal human behavior because we are humans. It's this common humanity, which actually really deshames our own self-judgment about what's happening. And then the third stool of self-compassion, the third leg of the stool kind of is the self-kindness, which is a question, something we should always be asking ourselves is, what can I do right now to support myself? Maybe I need to put my hand on my heart and reconnect with like, just like, I'm okay, I'm safe. Maybe I'm feeling threatened. Maybe I need to just take a break and like, put myself in a little timeout and walk away and say to my kid, like, I'm too upset to talk about this right now. Let's come back and discuss it. Maybe I need to call a friend to hear about like how other people struggle in the same way. What would be a act of kindness that I could do right now? Maybe it's just a cup of tea, right? Like it could be something very practical. It could be like physical sensations and like soothing touch, which helps the nervous system calm down. Or maybe it's being witnessed by another adult that also has similar, like they can understand how hard it is. And just hearing that validation from another parent can be really like something that we need. So like, what is it that I need right now? Often when we get frustrated too, we need like to, again, move that energy through. It's like, I'm going to go for a walk outside. I'm going to go like for a 15-minute walk and like move this through my body, right? But it's also the same question that our children should be asking. I mean, actually the process should be like something we teach our kids throughout, ideally. Mindfulness. It sounds like you're really frustrated, right? It sounds like you're really upset about this. Yeah, where do you notice that in your body? Do your hands feel hot? Do you feel like, I hear your voice is getting higher. You feel like raising your voice. Yes, like it feels like tension here, right? Of course. We all feel that way. And then the common humanity for the child, everybody, every person feels like this sometimes. You're not a bad kid for feeling this way. It is frustrating. It is upsetting, right? To de-shame them because they often feel like I'm a bad kid. Something's wrong with me, which can develop like over time. Chronically feeling that way is like toxic shame. And they even have a term for it called shame proneness. which means you kind of have this, like, it becomes kind of a permanent state that, like, it's hard to feel good about yourself when you're shame prone, because when you have difficult behavior and it's judged in society as bad, you start to think you're bad instead of the behavior is unskillful, but you're still a good person, right? And then the kindness with the child is like, it might be hard for them to learn what to do for themselves to start. So you can offer them, what will be helpful right now? Can I get you a glass of water? Maybe we just want to crumble up some paper. Like, let's just crumble up this paper because this is so frustrating. And just like do an exercise of like, releasing that frustration, anger through like, the paper doesn't care if you crumble it. But if you say those words to your sibling, that can leave a longer mark than, ripping up a cardboard box or whatever. So discharge the energy underneath and express the feeling through an action, or write it down, or whatever it is, like different creative ways to, what do I need right now? And maybe I need a hug, I need to cry, right? Depending on where your child is and what works for them at that age level. And then it changes as they get older, just like it changes for us. But I think those 3 skills are really powerful for us to model for our kids and to practice for ourselves. And then also to teach them that they can do this for themselves as they get older. We're going to supplement them with it right now and scaffold. But as they get older, they can actually do this on their own.
I like to teach loving kindness meditation to parents, and for them to do it out loud in front of their kids and teach their kids to do it. Yeah, it's a really loving thing. So I want to just shift a little bit and talk. I mean, you are a trained playful parenting leader, right? Yeah. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about playfulness in the middle of chaos and what you think about it. So it seems counterintuitive, perhaps, when things are intense to be playful. But when do you think playfulness helps during dysregulation, and when does it completely backfire? Like, oh no, that's not a good idea.
Yeah. So generally playfulness would be like phase 1 of dysregulation. If you're into like phase 2, it's better to go with something more empathic. And sometimes it's hard to know depending on your child. So what I would say is test it out and see. No, you don't have to be perfect. You just repair. So let's say you try out some playfulness and your kid is like, stop. Okay, that's not going to land right now. Let's go into the empathy. I hear you. Yeah, that wasn't what you wanted to hear right now. I wasn't trying to make fun of this, right? If you're kind of in that like mild to moderate level of meltdown, play can be a great tool. You know your child best as a parent. And if you have multiple kids, generally they have different responses to this as well. So it's kind of like personalized, but it can be a great way to break the tension. So the thing we're talking about with the meltdown, the nervous system being overwhelmed, there's a stress there, there's a tension, and laughter and play are a great way to break up that tension and interrupt it. It disrupts that tension and allows it to just break apart into pieces and then like trickle away and flow. It allows the emotions to flow through. We're not trying to stop their emotions. We're trying to help them flow through. I think of it as kind of like the digestive system. We're not trying to stop. We're trying to create more mobility throughout, because emotions come to us like our arms and legs. We don't get to choose them, especially temperament-wise and situations. Often they just come to us. Like maybe it's from a thought, maybe it's from a trigger, whatever it is, like or a stressor. It's hard to stop an emotion once it's kickstarted. And what we can do is help the emotion go through. So laughter through play is an antidote to like anxious rigidity, and it breaks it apart a little bit. Especially like between siblings, they can be something that you introduce. Again, like the intensity level has to be appropriate for play, but it can really shift things. So like you can use physical play or verbal. So you can shift gears in the moment by, if your child is small enough, you can pick them up and like, I know this is really frustrating and we're going to figure it out together. But first I'm going to roll you around in this blanket and I'm going to make a burrito out of you. Mm-hmm. Like, let's say they're small enough for you to do that. Or if they're too big to like roughhouse with a little bit like that, you can use like objects around the room and like, just to like, it's not a distraction per se. It is an interruption in the tension. Think of it that way, because the emotion will still express itself through the play. But like when a child is feeling angry, we're not trying to get rid of the anger. We're trying to add humor to hold the anger through. Does that make sense? Like we're trying to add other emotions that signal safety cues. So we're not getting rid of these uncomfortable emotions. We're adding It's like a recipe. You're not taking away the thing because it doesn't taste good. You're adding more flavors to bring out its quality, right? So, and for these challenging emotions, they act out because they don't have enough safety to be expressed verbally or like without violence, right? Like tell your sibling what you want without attacking them. Tell me what you're so frustrated about without hitting me, right? Mm-hmm. Or if they want to go nonverbal, like, you know, let's take a break and then we'll go through it, right? But they can sit with that discomfort. So they can sit with that discomfort when we add elements of play, because it's, again, like it dilutes the intensity of those challenging emotions and creates more safety for them to not feel like such emergencies. Like and essentially it's like sitting like with discomfort more, frustration tolerance. We're like diluting it a little bit, right? Because if we just leave that challenging emotion without the play, it feels bad. It feels uncomfortable. The child wants to shake it off. And usually if they hit or yell, they discharge it, but it's now hurt somebody else, hurt another person. So we're trying to teach skills to diffuse it without taking it out on other people or themselves, right?
Yeah, for sure. You know, I heard you say a minute ago, don't be afraid to just try something, because, you know, try either sitting down on the floor or, you know, making a suggestion or being playful, because you can always repair. And kids from difficult beginnings, they are easily dysregulated by a lot of things, even attempts to help, to soothe, to support, and they push away most attempts to comfort.
Right.
They escalate it. I guess I'm wondering what you think parents can do. I hear sitting down and I hear walking away, but that often creates more abandonment, but walking close creates threat. How do parents show up without making it worse?
So when I was saying walking away, I think that would be more appropriate for like a child. I wouldn't recommend that for a child that has abandonment issues per se. But let's say there's some other issues, but maybe not abandonment issues. And they're like maybe preteens and up. You're trying to role model self-respect. That would be an appropriate response to be like, okay, like you're not going to do that to a 3 or 4-year-old because they're just going to follow you. It's not going to work anyway. But if you're dealing with like a preteen or a teenager, you're saying, it's not okay to talk to me like that. I want to hear what you have to say. And we have to have this respectful communication 2 ways. So again, maybe that's something you do later on in your journey, maybe not to start, right? But it's the whole point is to benefit your child, to show them that the parent's standing up for their own self-esteem and their rights as a human. And so if they do that, that means that if somebody talks to me like that, I should do the same thing, right? But to start, this whole like distance, proximity and distance thing, keep in mind that your presence, just being there, yes, it might have some elements of threat because maybe nurturing felt unsafe, but there is also elements of safety with your presence. And so you might have to find the right distance from your child, but err on the side of closer rather than further. And you don't have to even say, often like the words we say, they trigger the kid more because we're trying to be maybe extra empathic or we're trying to like go cognitive. If we talk too much, they're having to think about what we're saying and it's taking them out of their emotional brain and they're not actually processing the emotion. It's just getting trapped in there. So it's actually better to say less. And I would ideally give them a little bit of space, but stay in the room and just embody lots of compassion for yourself, because it's hard to watch your child like this. Mm-hmm. This is really hard for both of us. A breath in for me and a breath out for him or her, right? Self-compassion for me and compassion for my child. So, and this is kind of like your internal dialogue. Since you're not doing much else, you're not talking to them much, they're having a meltdown and you're there. Your presence is doing something. It's the most powerful thing, actually. Your nervous system is resonating with their nervous system and it's sending cues of safety. And when you can appear like less of a threat, focus on your breath. If they feel threatened with eye contact, so lower the threat level. So that's what I was saying. If you sit down lower, you don't look like a big predator. They feel safer. They feel more in power of their situation, right? Calm breaths in and out, relaxing body posture because they're reading these nonverbal cues. If you say anything, maybe you can say something like, this is hard. Mm-hmm. I'm right here. I hear you. Now saying all 3 of those things, probably too much. Yeah. In the beginning. So pick one, maybe. They're still going to be like, shut up, maybe, right? Like they'll be like, shut up. I know. It's hard. Yeah. This is hard for both of us. Yeah. And like really keep it near. I mean, I hear you is really a beautiful statement. I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. Because they're going through this, like, if you're seeing them sweating and you're seeing them like kind of acting like a wild animal, like kind of like this discharge of a meltdown, that's actually the healing. Sweating, panting, growling, grunting. Allow these expressions if they're not causing the child harm and they're not hurting you. This is like the tail end of the healing is the expression of the emotion. But often what parents do is like, no. Let me like make you feel better, because we don't understand it and we try to stop it. And then we've actually stopped the healing of it, right? So it's a very somatic thing that kids go through as well. If you can remain very... Now, some kids might get triggered by you being super zen like that. With highly sensitive kids, deeply feeling kids, it might be more like you might find a better match when they're acting like they're really frustrated about something, really upset. You validate the intensity of their emotion without acting out the actual emotions. Let's say with anger, wow, this is really frustrating. My voice is higher. Maybe I move my body like, this is really frustrating. I get it. I'm showing that I understand the intensity and the magnitude, but I'm not angry.
Yeah.
They are the angry one, but I'm matching that so that the mirror neurons are picking up on like, I get it.
Yeah.
You're not crazy. I'm validating that I get what you're saying. So we connect on that, but I'm the calm one still.
Yeah.
You can lean on me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Dajana, I have so many questions. You're giving us such good, concrete wisdom. I'm so grateful for that. I'm usually the only voice in the wilderness, so it's so nice to have someone else say similar things in new words. I want to make sure that you have time to talk about what you have to offer, and if people want to get a hold of you, how to do that. And all of your information will be in the show notes, but I want you to share with our audience here.
Yeah, sounds great. So I have a podcast that I just started out a few years ago. So there's not a ton of episodes, but there's a lot of episodes on this type of thing where we talk about the nervous system and we talk about reframing big feelings, challenging behavior, anxiety, sibling stuff, co-parenting, picky eating, topics that really like trigger parents. And it's hard, right? Self-compassion when we're yelling. So a lot of these themes are in my podcast, which is free on Substack, and that's Delight in Parenting on Substack. So that's one great way to listen to more content that's free. And I always post new podcasts as well. I also put up virtual summits, usually like at least 1 or 2 per year. So virtual, like free virtual conferences for parents. So if you sign up for my newsletter, you'll stay informed about when the future ones are coming up. And the best way to sign up for my newsletter is to get, I have a freebie on my website, which is delightinparenting.com. And you can get access to the 3 steps to regulate your nervous system with self-compassion. These self-compassion practices, it's kind of like a cheat sheet freebie that people can sign up for. And then that'll add you to my newsletter where you can get access to upcoming summits. I just had a summit earlier this year that I co-hosted with a colleague, and it was on siblings. So siblings fighting, sibling resentment, sibling rivalry, how parents lose it when siblings fight, how it's probably one of the most common stressors because siblings are around each other daily. And it just like, if they grind on each other's nerves, it happens regularly. So it gets really like, it's a common challenge in households with siblings. So that was a free summit. Now it's available for VIP upgrade. And that we had about 20 expert interviews talking about all these elements of siblings. That was our second sibling summit. I've had previous ones as well. And all the summits are actually available as part of, if you sign up for my membership, which is a paid product where I do weekly coaching, weekly office hours with members, and they get access to resources like all the summits and other things. So,
oh, that's great. That's a really great resource. Thank you so much for giving us your time and your wisdom today. My beautiful parent partners here on this marathon of parenting children from difficult beginnings, we're doing this together. So thank you so much for everything that you offer. And remember, parents, your love matters when more than love is required. I'll see you in the next episode of UnMuted Love.